Hello everyone. Summer school just ended, so I figured now would be a good time to just go over how it went, what I learned, a few mistakes I made, some things I am taking into my classroom in August, and just like an overall just kind of reflect on the highlights of what I had in my journals every week. So if you are new to my channel, welcome. I am happy to have you here. If you are returning to a video from me, I am so happy that you're here and welcome back. So let's get into it. First, I'm going to talk about 5 mistakes that were common occurrences in my reflection journals every week. The first one was over planning. So I planned a lot because in the schedule that they gave us for summer school or next level learning, there were such big blocks of time for like ELA and then smaller ones for math. And so I planned a lot just to make sure that I was going to be able to fill that time, not realizing that time goes by really quickly when you're teaching content and answering questions and giving students independent time or group time or whatever. So I definitely overplanned, and I felt like I needed to get through most of it or all of it, which is not necessarily true because we picked back up on things and did little reviews here and there in the days that followed. So I just really was trying to get a feel for how much I could do or what have you and just gain that experience. But I overplanned a lot, which made me feel like I needed to get through most of it when that wasn't the case. Which leads me into mistake number 2. I did not set up reminders and alarms on my watch or phone before I started summer school when I got that schedule, which with the over planning really hindered my time management a bit as far as it came into the day. So on the very first day we did a lot of ELA. There wasn't any time for them to do their online learning, and it really cut into math time. So then during enrichment time I had to finish up some math stuff, and then they had less time to work on their project, and then I wasn't keeping track of the time for when we should have transitioned because transitions are hard and they take a little bit. And so we may or may not have been just a tiny bit late for dismissal. They may or may not have had to call into our room to see when we were coming down. But we figured it out. We made it work. It was good to go. So as soon as I went back upstairs, though, I did put all those alarms in. 5-minute warnings, 2-minute warnings, specials, enrichment, lunch, recess, all the things, because I wanted to make sure that that did not happen again. It just kind of slipped my mind because I was so worried about lesson planning, I think. Even though next level learning is not as it's not as intense as the normal school year, but I feel like I was bringing that energy into summer school unnecessarily, and it just kind of backfired a bit. Mistake number 3, talking too much, which you probably can tell from this video and others. I gave way too much instruction. It confused my kids. I had a bunch of questions in the in-between, and then I'd be like, I already talked about this. Well, they couldn't remember it because they were trying to focus on everything I said. So I would talk about what we're doing at the time, and I would go through all the information about it. And then I'd be like, next you're gonna do this, and I'd go through all that. And then I'd be like, okay, after you're finished with all that stuff, you can do these 2 things and blah blah blah. Where I ended up changing it to a must do and a may do type format. So I would talk about what they needed to do then. So read pages 5 through 10 and answer the even numbered questions, right? And then I would go through my expectations for it. And then on the board for my slide, it would be must do, read pages 5 to 10, answer even numbered questions. And then underneath it, it would say Lexia, which is what we use for our online reading. And then it would say 20 minutes. And it gives them the time on top of their Lexia screen. So I don't need to put a timer on or anything like that because they'll have it. Once they were done, they put their iPads in the corner of their desk if they wanted to read a book. Otherwise, the may do side was reading or Epic or Class Dojo, right? And then it had the voice level that I wanted them on under each thing, the must do's and may do's, right? It had their voice level on there. So everybody was at a voice level 0. And then I would walk around once everybody was finished with everything they were doing and I saw everybody on either Epic or Class Dojo. Then I would do our attention grabber, what the kids really liked, and then I would let them know that the voice level is now, like a 2 or a 3 or whatever. So yes, talking too much, you're giving instruction, lots of questions from the kids because it was just, they were overloaded. Number 4, my attention getter, right? So I watched a video and I can't remember what the lady's name is, and I know that I said that in other videos and I will link it below in this one as well. But I loved how she talked about with attention getters that just abruptly stop students. They're going to finish talking about what they were talking about anyways. So doing a countdown is better. So I saw her video a little bit later into summer school, but when I did implement that, it was a lot better. So it would be something like, it would be something like when they heard my voice, they would all look at me and I would have my hand up and I'd be like, I need your voices off in 4. I need your voices off in 5. I need your eyes on me in 4. I need your iPad closed in 3, or whatever it was that they were doing, book closed in 3, paper put away in 3, not writing in 3, whatever. And then it would be like, I need your eyes on me in 2. And I need you ready to learn in 1, or something of that nature. Every once in a while, I would change up what number 1 was, but essentially it was pretty much the same thing. That worked out a lot better because they could wrap up what they were doing, get to a good stopping point, and I would count kind of at that pace, maybe a little bit slower, maybe a little bit faster, depending on what they were working on. And that was way better than just like, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, or, track in the front, or whatever the case was. Because like I said, they would finish doing what they were saying anyways, or doing what they were doing anyway, or finish like their round of, tag on dojo anyways. And then I'm sitting here waiting and giving redirection, and then they're getting frustrated and I'm getting frustrated. The countdown worked a lot better. And then my last mistake that I saw most often was I used candy as a reinforcement too early and too often. So it would be like they were all on task and I would walk around and give them a Jolly Rancher. And this was starting from like the very first day. So it kind of created this classroom narrative of, I'm going to sit here and, do what I'm supposed to be doing so that I can get candy. But then in the times that I forgot about it, then there was like talking that needed a lot of redirection, or students raising their hand and asking me if they were going to get candy because they expected it. So toward the second half, I definitely gave candy out a lot less often. I incorporated more like fun games and stuff in order to get them candy so they could earn it. Or I would wait and give people candy at the very end of the day so that they, just like, thank you for doing a good job. So I started to change that toward the end. I don't think I'm going to do candy very often in my classroom. But yeah, that was definitely something that I learned was not the best. So from that, I will talk about like other things that I'm taking with me and what I learned. So one of the big things was my confidence, right? So I have a lot more classroom confidence than I did before I stepped into that first classroom, I will say. I've worked with kids for the last few years, and I've interacted with students for the last few years. I've done subbing here and there, but I never had the consistent experience of being with the same group of kids, going through the same daily routine, reinforcing the same expectations day after day after day. So it was very, very helpful for me to do that now, because that's going to be more of my reality come August. Lesson planning, I feel like I got a little bit better at lesson planning, but I feel like what I did in school was a little bit more preparatory. Just because in summer school you don't submit lesson plans. I mean, some days I had like on a paper in the very beginning all typed out, and then people were looking at me like I was crazy. I definitely looked like a straight out of college person. And then as we kind of got through and I saw just kind of like things that needed to be tweaked and stuff like that, it turned into like a notepad type deal, which worked out really well because it wasn't as, it was structured, but it wasn't like during the school year structured. So like the principal wasn't coming in to look at my lesson plan. I had everything detailed and like sectioned off on a piece of like, paper, and it ended up working out perfectly. I'll transition over to lesson planning how I'm supposed to do it based off of my school and how my principal wants it in August. And then when it comes to helping struggling students and like practicing using data, that was another really, really, really big thing that I feel like, sorry, my son came in the room and then closed the door. That was another big thing for me. Being able to get online and see what the kids were doing, what parts they were struggling with, and just overall kind of how I needed to differentiate some more instruction and who I needed to pull a little bit more was very helpful. I'm not especially in tune with it at this point, but I'm definitely exposed, which means it's going to be better for me during the school year. And it was nice to be able to like have that hands-on experience with it. And then from that, I was able to pull small groups. I did small groups Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I did a lot of one-on-one with the kids. So they would come to my desk and we would work on specific skills. Like distributive property was a big thing in the classroom. So I wanted them to write every single step. Their bigger problem, I wanted them to have their 2 broken down problems. They had to have parentheses. They had to have the plus sign. Underneath, they had to have the 2 solutions. They still had to have the plus sign. They needed the equal sign. They needed the answer. And then at the top for the initial equation, they needed the answer. It was like boom, 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 boom. When we started incorporating arrays, they needed to have their array. They needed to draw the line where their 2 equations were. They needed to have the 2 equations labeled. Like we went through step by step. And then for those students who needed a little bit of extra help with it, and it was more than what they needed in small group, I would pull them to the side, or even they would feel comfortable enough to come up to me and let me know they needed one-on-one help, and then I would help them. So that was something else that was really nice. And it just sucks because I know I'm not going to have that time during the school year, but I'm going to try to figure out how to maximize small groups at the very least the best that I can, because I hear from a lot of teachers that small group is the hardest thing during the school year. The only other thing that I have on here that was big in my journals were navigating curriculum. So one thing that I will say, and that I've heard lots of other people say, and that I feel like people will continue to say, is that college does not prepare you to navigate curriculum. Like, not at all. I can navigate the standards for the state. I can navigate them through different subjects. I can pull stuff. I can lesson plan from them. I can create activities for them. I feel like I could navigate the standards for the state like I know it like the back of my hand. We did a lot of that, a lot of in-depth lesson planning on stuff like that. But there was nothing when it comes to curriculum. It's so overwhelming when you first look at it. There's so much content in there. Going through it felt like me over instructing my kids. Like I understood what they felt like as I was trying to navigate curriculum. It was so much. So I'm glad that I had this experience to be able to figure out what to press, how to get to this video, how to get to this activity, how to navigate what I need to write on the smart board, how to take the screenshots and download different things to put them in my slides to make it a little bit more concise for myself and for my students. Because when I was projecting on the board from the actual curriculum online, that is where a lot of my talking too much came into play. Once I started taking the important bits of information and putting it into a slideshow just to condense it, my teaching got a lot more concise and my kids started to make a lot more progress. Bleh. And that is in ELA and in math. So it really helped me to start getting into the curriculum, navigating, figuring out what things were, where they were, stuff like that. So all in all, do I think that teaching summer school, next level learning was worth it or not, I would say yeah, it was very worth it. There are so many experiences that I had in here, building relationships with my kids, um, and getting the classroom management stuff practice that I wanted to use in my classroom, some of which worked, some of which didn't work. Maybe I'll talk about that stuff in a new video. How I built relationships. I literally feel like building relationships is my superpower. None of the kids in my classroom were from my original school until the very end. I had a couple added to my classroom that were from my original school, but I had built such great relationships. My kids wanted me to stay at their school. They were talking about switching to my school because they wanted to be able to see me. I had a student use his mom's phone to reach out to me, and I loved hearing from that student. That student was one of my favorites in the classroom. All my kids were super phenomenal, but this student in particular was so funny. Um, but yeah, no, it was so good to get to know them on a just like personal level of the things that they like, candies they like, things they like to do outside of school. A lot of them like to dance, and we had dance battles on Fridays, and it was just such a great environment, and I built such good relationships with my kids. They got to know me and my personality, the things that I liked and didn't like. I got to know about them. It turned into something so beautiful, and I love that they were so happy to come to summer school and that I was a big part of their positive experience. So yeah, overall, I definitely feel like it was worth it. I learned a lot. I gained a lot of good relationships. I built a lot of good connections at the school from people who were impressed by how well I was able to do. And granted, I wasn't perfect, but I definitely improved. So definitely think it was worth it. Definitely learned a lot. I'm definitely taking these 5 mistakes and really putting them into mind for my classroom expectations and what I'm going to be doing for my room next year in August. Always saying that's kind of weird. So thank you for hanging out with me just now and going over some mistakes. I would love to know in the comment section what mistakes that you have made if you taught summer school, or as a first year teacher, if you're watching this, what mistakes to look out for, or even just my veteran teachers. If there are mistakes that you would like to give wisdom on to myself and any other first year teachers or people thinking about being a teacher that will watch this video, I would love to have that so that we can learn from your experiences. But other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.